Hello, good afternoon to all of you.
Good
So,
afternoon, sir.
good
Good
afternoon.
afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. So, I think we're joined by more than 30 participants, and I can also see one of our students. She did applied linguistics with me last time, and she is also very keen to join. Welcome, Dripta. How are you, Dripta?
Yes, sir, I am fine.
You're fine. You're in Kolkata or somewhere else?
So I am here only at JNU.
Oh, you okay? You're in JNU.
Yeah,
Good to
I
know.
haven't left yet.
Okay, good, good.
Yes, since I know in Kolkata, it's very difficult to get in my place. There is no local trend which is going on here.
Okay, okay, good.
Yeah.
So, okay, Tripta, we'll talk later.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, since this is the course applied linguistics, and so I think we have just let me admit 2 or 3 people. So, we have already, I think, 2 or 3 introductory classes, and as I told you, that we'll have at least 3 or 4 introductory classes, and then we'll continue and move to our next unit and so still let's say 2 or 3 lectures and then we'll move to our next unit. So anyone, last to last class, if you remember, we have kind of informal kind of introduction. So I know people, let's say whether it's Abdul Halim, Meghna, Akshit, Shivam, Parul, Lokesh, and others, let's say we had informal kind of introduction last time. Why did you join in, why are you doing linguistics and why JNU? What is your interest? All that kind of things. So anyone, let's say joining for the first time, this is the first lecture, you're attending my lecture. So if you could just, briefly introduce yourself and introduce yourself that why you are in linguistics, why JNU, and what is your aspiration. So that, briefly, then I can start today's lecture. Anyone? If there is no,
Good evening, sir. Myself,
this is
Paramjit Singh.
this is Paramjit Singh.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Paramjit.
Sir, this is my first class. I am from international studies background, but I contacted you regarding I want to do a linguistic course. I
Mhm.
have an interest in linguistic and learning meaning of the language. That was my area that I want to develop, but also I have interest in rhetoric and prodigy. So I
Prosody.
thought linguistic could help me to further develop my interest. That's why I contacted you through mails. And
Okay, Paramjit. I think you are also joined in the Google Classroom, and I think I have already sent some basic, linguistics books, an introduction to language by Fromkin. And if you want more basic, books and some basic readings in linguistics, since you are joining, in this course, and there is a prerequisite. I won't say prerequisite, but at least basic kind of understanding. That you have to have, before you do applied linguistics course, certain kind of basic understanding anyway. So please do read some of this, books and also some articles, and follow the class lectures regularly, then it won't be a problem as much, but so Paramjit is joining from School of International Studies, and JNU is known for this interdisciplinary kind of, research, interdisciplinary subjects. You can do a course from Arts and Aesthetic Center, from English Center, from also from let's say, Economics Center, or any other centers for that matter. Okay, welcome Paramjit to our center, and also
thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
anyone, anyone those for the first time. Okay, so no one, let's say, except Paramjit and Dripta. As I already introduced Dripta, she is joining. She has already done. She completed her masters in linguistics from our center. Not completed, I think in the process. She must have submitted her
Yeah,
assignment.
still didn't get my grades.
Yeah,
So
so still we're finalizing all these things. You see, So for us, like,
Yeah.
anyway, so let's begin today's lecture. And so if you remember, last two classes, it is more about introduction, introduction to, let's say, applied linguistics and some of the definitions. And if you remember, this is what I planned that I'll be, after the lecture, since I'm recording these lectures, and if internet connection and everything is fine, I'll try to upload these videos in Google Classroom or maybe in the YouTube. So, but one thing is that I cannot, guarantee that I will be uploading all these videos, because there are lots of internet issues, and then maybe there are other issues as well. So maybe some lectures, if I think that, yeah, this is fine, so I'd be uploading, but otherwise I may not upload. Okay, so there is a kind of it's optional, basically. It's not compulsion from my side as well. Okay, so but if I am uploading those lectures, then maybe you can just simply click on the link, and whether it's a YouTube link or a Google link or whichever the links, so, and you can watch and listen. And after watching those things, if you have problems, doubts, definitely you can ask me. Okay, so so in the last two lectures, if you remember, simple introduction to applied linguistics, some definitions, and what we do in applied linguistics, what is our aspiration in applied linguistics, those are some of the things we have already discussed. Okay, so today what I have planned to do, briefly, I think I must have told you that kind of a history of applied linguistics. So uh, what is the history, of applied linguistics? So how it began, and let's say where it began, and I think I must have told you initially that applied linguistics began with language teaching, and language teaching, mainly second language teaching, or to some extent English language teaching. It began with that, and slowly and gradually applied linguistics kind of expansion, took place, and so it is not only language teaching these days. It is there are many other things. That's what we discussed in the last two classes, that the kind of domain of applied linguistics, what is this, and what we do, the practitioners of applied linguistics. And as a result, if you remember the definitions, and that's the reason it is very difficult to define applied linguistics. What is applied linguistics is very difficult to define. So so these are some of the issues. So I'll be trying to talk about today's lecture, and what is the present status of applied linguistics. And let's say, since we are here in India, and let's say what we are doing in India, and not only in India, applied linguistics began somewhere in USA, in Europe, let's say, and suddenly and slowly and gradually it expanded, let's say, in rest of the countries. So so we'll try to see, and since we are from India also, let's say we try to see that in India, where are the places applied linguistics is taught, and let's say what kind of scope, what kind of future you may have, let's say, if you do applied linguistics, let's say, and let's say you are practitioners of applied linguistics, let's say, what kind of future you may have. But I can definitely say, in compared to theoretical linguistics, and if you compare these two disciplines, theoretical linguistics and applied linguistics, if you are in applied linguistics, your futures will be much more bright. If you are too, let's say, somewhere in theoretical linguistics, because you have a huge scope here in applied linguistics. Anyway, so these are some of the things I'll try to talk about. And also recently, we have published a book from Bahari Publications. I was the editor of that book, and that was the culmination of our national seminar on linguistics and language sciences. I think Dipta was also part of it last time we conducted that seminar, and that many papers were published, many papers, conference papers, who were contributed in this volume. So I was the sole editor, and so that's one of the articles, my introduction part, linguistics and language sciences, scope, opportunities in India. So that I think that is already uploaded in academia.edu. So if you're interested, you can also have a look at that article also, especially talking about linguistics and language sciences, is scope, and so some of these things, if you're interested. Okay. So this is where my plan today. So briefly, we'll talk about history of applied linguistics. Now, now something like related to applied linguistics. Can anyone just simply tell me the definition? What I have already told you, Guy Cook, Guy Cook, talks about applied linguistics. I mentioned this definitions again and again. Just one of you can simply tell me that what is that definition of applied linguistics Guy Cook was talking about? Anyone just?
Uh, Hello, sir.
Yes, Meghna.
Sir, I think this is how he describes it. He says that applied linguistics is concerned with the relationship of the relation of knowledge about language to the decision making in the real world.
Thank you, Meghna, quoting the exact line. So that's what Guy Cook in that book, applied linguistics talks about. So it's a concern with the relation of knowledge about language to decision making in the real world. And so what we have learned so far, that when you are talking about applied linguistics, so applied linguistics is trying to resolve language related problems that people encounter in the real world. So the kind of language related problems you encounter in the real world, you see. And so applied linguistics is basically problem based. And so if you remember in the last class, I was talking about it's not a theoretical discipline, rather it's a theorizing discipline, if you remember. And if you have seen the video as well, the YouTube link. And what we have learned so far, that it gets or brings insights from linguistics, and try to analyze the kind of practical issues of language use. So one of the things, I told you the distinction between formal and as well as the functional. So we talk about formalism, we talk about functionalism. So we are into functionalism mainly, mainly the language use part we are talking about. So, and applied linguistics, whenever we talk about applied linguistics, it's an interdisciplinary field, and which identifies, investigates, and often offers solutions, but not ready-made solutions. You remember I was talking about gallimaufry. It's not kind of gallimaufry of something like jamboree kind of things. People are together and try to solve the problems whatever the way I feel like doing it. Not like that, but rather trying to do kind of research, and then even follow the practitioners and try to offer kind of solutions to the language related problems. So it's not kind of gallimaufry of things, so rather systematic. So we do both things, empirical investigations as well as the theoretical investigations, theoretical understanding. Whatever the theoretical understanding we do have, on the basis of that we try to make kind of empirical investigations as well. Okay, so and the other understanding what we have so far is that mainly the fields which are associated with applied linguistics, if you remember, education, psychology, communication research, anthropology, sociology, and these are some of the things I think I have already mentioned. And so mainly applied linguistics is an interdisciplinary field, and so the major branches of applied linguistics, if you are talking about, so what are those? Even applied linguistics or practitioners of applied linguistics, they also work on this in this field of bilingualism and multilingualism, conversation analysis, and contrastive linguistics, sign linguistics. That sign linguistics, and the people who were not able to speak. So deaf and dumb, those people, so sign linguistics, language assessment. I talked about language assessment, discourse analysis. One of the interesting things, discourse analysis. I think last semester I taught introduction to stylistics and discourse structure with the last, the fourth semester student, Dripta was also part of it, so discourse analysis language pedagogy, mainly the language teaching part, second language acquisition, SLA. So whole concern of second language acquisition, language planning, policy, interlinguistics, even people, interlinguistics, maybe this is the term, for the first time you must be hearing this term, interlinguistics. Interlinguistics, again, it's a kind of in the area of language planning. It's a language planning. Why I'm saying is that, especially though interlinguistics is the kind of a discipline formalized by Otto Jespersen in somewhere in 1931, and it's a science of interlanguages. So interlanguages, we mean to say here is, let's say, kind of contact languages. So what happens somewhere, as you know, that the kind of diversity of language and culture in different parts of the world, what happens? So somewhere we do not know which language to select, which language not to select. So in some cases, what happens in those cases, when this, especially in the language context scenario, what happens without planning, there is a new kind of language develops, emergence of a new language develops without any planning, So this is really interesting things. So what happens, especially talking about India, there are many cases. You must have seen that the area of like the place like Jharkhand, if you're talking about, to Jharkhand, so you have Austroasiatic language. On the other hand, you have Austroasiatic Munda language, let's say, and here you have at the same time Indo-Aryan language. So mixture. So as a result, these two communities, two cultures, so they are communicating for many years, or more maybe for many centuries for this. So as a result, new kind of languages emerge. So it is without planning. And in sociolinguistics, in language contact, there is a term we use, Sprackbund, or we call linguistic area, especially in this kind of language contact scenario. So you'll find many languages in India. Because of the contact language situations, there is emergence of new language. So whether it's Naga and Assamese, in somewhere in South, Dakhini, so which is basically Urdu, but not necessarily it's Urdu, but somehow again Dravidian language and Indo-Aryan language, So what I'm saying is that it's not, when you talk about interlinguistics is not something like it's a planned approach. So which language to impose, or let's say those in those communities. So as a result, what happens is a kind of planned language planning, interlinguistics, So in this framework, interlanguages become a subset of planned languages, extreme cases of language planning, So 4 or 5 languages, let's say, and out of that, one language is selected by the state, by the government, and it is pre-planned what kind of vocabulary should be introduced, what kind of, let's say, even for talking about the word formation thing, and not only word formation, even talk about the syntax. What kind of syntax have to be, let's say, incorporated. So many people must be working on that, So Otto Jespersen, one of the person in 1931, So mainly this is also part of applied linguistics when we talk about interlinguistics. Okay, so there are many things, as I told you, that stylistics and language teacher education, pragmatics, cross-cultural pragmatics also. So pragmatics, we look at language, especially the contextual uses of language, and when you talk about cross-cultural pragmatics, so try to compare the cultures. Last semester I think I discussed about that part, cross-cultural pragmatics. You see, and even I think someone in the last class was asking me, though we did not have enough time, that what is the cross-cultural pragmatics? So cross-cultural pragmatics is basically you look at different cultures and try to compare the cultures, especially the language use factor, you see. And so if you talk about different kind of different cultures, we have different kind of set of certain kind of expectations, how to uh, use language, and we do understand all these things. There are minute things, minute little differences. I think, let's say, bring a plate, let's say, especially in European context, or maybe in the Indian context also. If someone says that bring a plate, and if you just simply take the linguistic meaning and go to a party, just simply taking an empty plate, so what will happen? So that's the cultural part. Bring a plate means that so all these people are sharing food in that particular party. So and so bring a plate means, yes, we're sharing food, and especially in JNU also we do it in different occasions, whether it is Eid celebrations, whether it is in other kind of festival celebrations also. Many faculty members, uh, colleagues, we do also that kind of. So there is certain thing understood, So when you talk about cross-cultural pragmatics, we try to look at different aspects. It's not only about language, because I think I told you that. Especially in the discourse structure and discourse stylistics, discourse analysis, we talk about that things. It's not only about linguistic structure. There are much more things beyond that language structure or linguistic structure. Okay, so these are some of the things briefly. I think we discussed about in the last classes. You see, and so as I'm planning to discuss about this history of applied linguistics. So when did it start, where and why it started, and how did it grow? So, and I told you, I think it's being repeated, that applied linguistics somewhere it started in Europe and in the United States in the 1940s, and rapidly flourished, gained popularity in the international arena context. So somewhere after 1940s, so it gained popularity, and so if you are talking about United States of America, so applied linguistics, began narrowly as the application of insights from structural linguistics. So initially they started the application of insights from structural linguistics. Now you can ask me, sir, what is structural linguistics? Yes, structural linguistics, mainly we are talking about the structure. So the prominent figure in the American structural linguistics, so let's say the whole movement, if you're talking about, so all these people, whether you talk about this Edward Sapir, even Leonard Bloomfield for that matter, Edward Sapir, and all these people, Bernard Bloch, Zelik Harris, all these people, American structural linguist, for that matter, So, and Leonard Bloomfield, he himself, if you have done a course, Introduction to Linguistics, you remember that, that language, by Bloomfield, which is heavily influenced by behavioral ideas or behavioral tendencies. The book, if you have read the book, so talking about Leonard Bloomfield, so he developed the foundation for the Army Specialized Training Program in USA, and now what is happening? Try to understand this, the whole things. Why Army Specialized Training Program? Why this word I am emphasizing? Giving emphasis of this word, Army Specialized Training Program. If you remember, I think I told you in the last class, maybe in one reference, is that especially, and this is the time, 1940, 1939 to 1945. If you remember, this is the time of Second World War. I think you all know somewhere Second World War started after the end of First World War, 1919, 1920, and then Second World War started somewhere 1913, 1939, 1940. So this is the time. So many nations who took part in in the Second World War, willingly or not willingly, so they felt the need that we need to learn languages of the other countries, or we need some people, or let's say we need spy or spies for that matter, many people who could read or who can, let's say, who can read as well as communicate with other people, you know. So as a result, it's not only about English. I was talking about English as the same time second language. I was talking about second languages, you see. So Leonard Bloomfield, one of the structuralists, um, influenced by behavioral that thoughts and ideas. So he himself developed the foundation for the Army Specialized Training Program in USA. And another person, very important person, if you have heard about this person, Charles C. Fries. So Charles C. Fries, this is the University of Michigan in 1941. 1941, he especially established this English Language Institute at University of Michigan in 1941. And there are many people, I think you will get to know slowly and gradually. Robert Lado, again, especially in the area of error analysis. Error analysis, you remember that, especially when you learn a second language, we do lots of errors, let's say. So Robert Lado, again, especially in the area of error analysis, you know, and there are many people. Error analysis, contrastive analysis. So these are some of the things we'll discuss later on. So just simply telling you, these are some important figures, you know, initially. So and after, let's say, somewhere 1948, what happened? As I was talking about University of Michigan, and so in 1948, a research club at Michigan established Language Learning, a journal of applied linguistics. And that's what 1948, a Journal of Applied Linguistics. And this is the first journal to bear the term applied linguistics. We did not have that term, you know, applied linguistics. The first journal to bear the term applied linguistics, Language Learning, a Journal of Applied Linguistics, you know. And Charles C. Ferguson, somewhere in 1959, and in Washington, D.C., I'm talking about mainly US. He also established a set of Center for Applied Linguistics in Washington, D.C. in 1959. And so slowly and gradually, what is happening? So language teaching, I was telling you, started with language teaching. Now you will see that applied linguistics, talking about the domain of applied linguistics, now it will start its kind of expansion, you know, it will be expanded now. So from the late 1960s, applied linguistics somehow began to establish its own identity as an interdisciplinary field of linguistics concerned with real world language issues. So slowly and gradually, it will expand, you know, its domain, you know, and after somewhere in 1977, you know, and American Association for Applied Linguistics in 1977. So there is association in 1977 was established again. And in Britain, what happened? This is almost in the same time in Britain and in UK. And this is the person, J.C. Catford. I don't know whether you have heard this name, J.C. Catford. And this is the University of Edinburgh. Somewhere around 1956. So this J.C. Catford established this again School of Applied Linguistics in University of Edinburgh in UK. I'm talking about UK here. Okay. So now what is happening? Somewhere from language teaching, as I told you, language teaching to other related areas. So the 1950s, especially in the UK, saw the establishment of the University of Edinburgh's School of Applied Linguistics, which trained language teachers. So they trained language teachers in applying the principles of linguistics to the practice of pedagogy, you know, especially how to teach language, and not only to the students, but also to the teachers, you know. And so this is where applied linguistics, you know, started, and how this expansion is taking place. So briefly, I'll talk about the expansion of applied linguistics. So as I have already mentioned you that there is the Association of Applied Linguistics. So the International Association of Applied Linguistics, what we call AILA, the International Association of Applied Linguistics in 1973. So it was established in 1973. And the American Association, as I already mentioned, that it was established in 1977. And so all this association, and not only in USA, in other parts of the world, in other different countries also. So different centers of applied linguistics were established, and they also started publishing their research, their findings in different journals. And in 1980s, we had seen that annual review of applied linguistics in 1981. So annual review of applied linguistics, and so this is where 1981, and they published, as I told you, that many research articles, their findings, and after 1980s, what happened? Applied linguistics had moved into areas inquiry beyond language teaching. So not only language teaching, beyond language teaching. So and if you remember, there is a time I was telling you that there are many people initially they made that kind of distinction between linguistics applied and applied linguistics. This was the term. Even those days before 1980s, many people they made a distinction between this linguistics applied and applied linguistics. But since applied linguistics moved or into different directions, and into areas inquiry beyond language teaching, so we do not need that such kind of term, such kind of term like linguistics applied. I think I told you, one of the classes that we do not need it, because earlier there was a need, but nowadays there is no need, because applied linguistics, it means many things nowadays, you see. So especially in the 1960s, if you look at what kind of things people are doing, the practitioners of applied linguistics, they are mainly concerned with language assessment, language policy, and some people they have moved into second language acquisition, or second language learning. So these are some of the areas in 1960s, and slowly and gradually, applied linguistics became a problem-driven field rather than theoretical linguistics, including the solution of language-related problems in the real world. And by the 1990s, I'm moving 1990s, after 1980s, let's say. By the 1990s, applied linguistics had broadened, including critical studies and multilingualism, bilingualism, critical studies. And so research in applied linguistics was shifted to the theoretical and empirical investigation of real-world problems in which language is a central issue. I think this is the point. I think I have already told you that. So the kind of concern for applied linguistics is the theoretical and empirical investigation of real-world problems in which language is a central issue. This is the part, So briefly, the history of applied linguistics is something like this. So what happened? Somewhere it started in the USA or in the Europe or in the UK. And this is the time frame if we're talking about 1940s to 1960s, so applied linguistics. What are the people, the practitioners of applied linguistics, what they're doing? Mainly language assessment, language policy, second language acquisition. Now, after 1960s, what we have seen that applied linguistics, trying to be a problem-driven field rather than a theoretical linguistics. Earlier, it was a kind of theoretical linguistics. They're also getting inputs from the theoretical structural linguistics, mainly, So after 1970s, expansion was taking place. The main concern was the solution of the language-related problems in the real world, and it was taken for granted in the 1960s and the 70s that applied linguistics was about language teaching. And this is the time also, somewhere 1940s, if you move again later on also, mainly 1960s. So people have taken it for granted that, applied linguistics is mainly for language teaching, but it's not. Later on we have realized that's what I have discussed. And after 1990s, as I already told you that somehow applied linguistics shifted to the theoretical and empirical investigation of real world problems in which language is a central issue. So this is where Now, if you look at the kind of domain of applied linguistics, and just I am looking at the journal, if you remember that journal, 1948, University of Michigan, Language Learning, a journal of applied linguistics, and in 1993, the same journal, it's still continuing, 1993, and the editors remark, and this is what Language Learning, a journal of research in language studies. Try to understand this. Earlier, the name of the journal was Applied Linguistics. Now they are saying that language studies, they have also renamed their journal, Language Learning, a journal of research in language studies. And now let's say what it's saying, especially for, let's say, if you want to publish a paper, or your article in a renowned journal. So the editors will talk about the domain, which areas you can submit. And this is where now we try to see the domain of applied linguistics, or language studies. And that's what the editors remark. I just want to tell you the editor's remarks, So editors write, encourage the submission of more manuscripts from diverse disciplines, including applications of methods and theories from linguistics, psycholinguistics, cognitive science, ethnography, ethnomethodology, sociolinguistics, sociology, semiotics, educational inquiry, cultural or historical studies, to address fundamental issues in language learning, such as multilingualism, language acquisition, second and foreign language education, literacy, culture, cognition, pragmatics, and intergroup relations. Now, if you try to look at this, how, especially the applied linguistics, the kind of expansion took place, it is like now it's a large, if you look at the field, the kind of areas we look into, and so this is really interesting, So it is not mainly language teaching from where we started, it has moved into many different areas, and that's what we talked about, is interdisciplinary, So applied linguistics, it's mainly somewhere, if you're talking about the critical approach, we need to take a critical approach. It's not a kind of, ready-made kind of solutions. We're not like that, whichever the problems, language-related problems we have, and applied linguistics can provide a ready-made solution. It's not necessarily so, but rather we try to investigate and we try to see what is happening, and then we try to offer solutions to that problem. Okay, so applied linguistics is trying to resolve language-based problems that people encounter in the real world. Now, one of the things about applied linguistics after 1960s, and how this field, rapidly expanded into different areas or different disciplines also, for that matter. So why is this so after 1960s? One of the reasons for this also, try to remember that somehow after 1950s, what we see that this is the time of emergence of generative grammar or generative linguistics, and I think I already mentioned this part, somewhere around 1957, publication of syntactic structure by Chomsky, and then all these formalist approaches to language, and so mainly people who are working in the area, so they're mainly concerned about the language structure or the formal structure of the language, and as a result, language use was abundant. So there is a narrowing focus in linguistics with the advent of 1950s of generative linguistics, and has always maintained a socially accountable role demonstrated by its central interest in language problems. So language problems, all these things were ignored, mainly language use, as I told you. So many people in the people who are, let's say, functionalist, and also language teachers. So all that kind of theories which is being proposed in the generative traditions, because in the real applications, you do not have the real applications for that matter of that kind of formalism which is proposed there. So they needed something else to solve those language related problems what they are facing in the real life, you see. So as a result, so the narrowing focus in linguistics or the formal approaches to language, so as a result some people, so they started working on the language use. And this is especially the area, even if you, nowadays even if you talk about this is the area we are all connected, let's say. And just two days before, just I got an email from this this lady from this what is called Fulbright scholarship. So every year some of our students go to USA. They teach Indian languages, whether it's Bangla, whether it's Hindi, Assamese. So they go to USA, get this scholarship, Fulbright scholarship. And they give you pretty good lump sum, is that what you call it, scholarship. And as a result, so you go there and teach those bureaucrats back there in USA whichever the languages they want. Mainly they want something like from India, Assamese, Bangla, Hindi. The demand for Hindi is more because, as you know, that talking about Hindi expand the kind of use of Hindi in India, like let's say in compared to Assamese and Bangla will be more. So every year, many people they go to USA to pursue this. They teach. I remember many students from our center itself. I can name at least 20 to 25, or maybe more than that. People have gone availing this, Fulbright scholarship, fellowship. So it is not especially in the area of formal linguistics, or Chomskyan linguistics, but mainly in the area of applied linguistics or language teaching or second language teaching. So that's what I'm saying. So if you're in applied linguistics, your scope would be much more, in compared to theoretical linguistics. Yeah, maybe if you want to be next Chomsky, that's a different case, or follower of Chomsky or Chamcha of Chomsky, that's a different case. But anyway, so this is where slowly and gradually we see that the kind of expansion how it took place in different parts of the world. And I just simply talked about USA. Now that association that it had moved, let's say, in different parts of the world, whether you talk about Australia, whether you talk about Canada, you talk about Ireland, Japan, New Zealand, India, in different parts of the world, and most of the countries, let's say, in the world, most of the countries, let's say, they are part of this association also. At least, I think 40 or 45 countries part of this International Association of Applied Linguistics. So just to mention one or two, Australia and Canada, Ireland, Japan, New Zealand, and India also, So although the field of applied linguistics started from Europe and United States, the field rapidly flourished in the international context. Applied linguistics first concerned itself with principles and practices on the basis of linguistics in the early days, if you look at, and in the early days, it was linguistics applied, at least from the outside of the field, especially if you're talking about early days. And in the 1960s, however, applied linguistics was expanded to include language assessment, language policy, and second language acquisition. And 1970s, that's what the expansion took place, and by the 1990s, applied linguistics had broadened, including critical studies and multilingualism. So all these things we have already discussed. And in the USA, I talked about the case somewhere, what happened in USA. I told you about Bloomfield, that's the Army Specialized Training Program, and also Charles C. Fry's, that English Language Institute at the University of Michigan, and also that the research club at Michigan, Language Learning Journal of Applied Linguistics, they started, and how this journal later on they removed applied linguistics. Instead of saying applied linguistics, now they are saying language studies. Language studies. So 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 this is really interesting. So in UK also, you look at the same kind of thing in UK. So the 1950s saw the establishment of the University of Edinburgh. I told you about Edinburgh School of Applied Linguistics, and this person, I don't know whether you have heard about this person, Jesse Catford. Have you heard of Jesse Catford? This is also one of the famous person. If you're talking about translation or translation studies, Jesse Catford. So he also worked in the area of translation. So he has introduced many new terms in translation studies. Jesse Catford, and mainly looking at translation. When you talk about translation, mainly people talk about translation from from literary point of view. So poem, short stories, and all those novels, how to translate and other things. So, but Jesse Catford mainly talks about linguistics aspect of the translation, and so definition used by Jesse Catford is that the transfer of SL to TL. Talks about transfer of SL to TL. So source language and target language, So now he talks about different kind of transfer process, from what kind of transfer takes place. It's a pretty good book also, I think, Linguistic Theory of Translation. Please, if you are interested, try to know the linguistic aspect of the translation, then you must read this book, Jesse Catford. And Derrida also worked on in this area, in the area of translation. It's one of the post-structuralist figure, Derrida. Anyway, so we'll come back to those later on, not now. So when I'll talk about translation, maybe in one of the classes, I'll talk about in detail, let's say, what are the linguistic aspects of translation Jesse Catford was talking about. So Jesse Catford in Britain, that's what I was telling you, was established by Jesse Catford at the University of Edinburgh in 1956. That's the School of Applied Linguistics. So the whole International Association of Applied Linguistics, and this is the time it was founded in France, the whole association in 1964. So AILA, AILA, International Association of Applied Linguistics, and this, though there is a French title was also there, Association whatever, the French title is also there. So AILA, but it's mainly AILA. Okay. So, but abbreviation is both International Association of Linguistic Applications. So international AILA has affiliates in more than 30 countries, some which are more than 30 countries, and many, not only 30 countries, later on many countries also part of that AILA, International Association of Applied Linguistics. And now if you look at the aim and aspiration of this AILA so far, the International Association of Applied Linguistics, just and in the brochures also, you will find that even if you type in the Google, you will find that in every year, or maybe not only year, at times twice a year, different places, they do conduct seminar, conferences, and you'll get to know the details if you just simply type it, and they have collaborations, So so what we have understood so far, that applied linguistics is interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary field of research and practice, dealing with practical problems of language and communication that can be identified and analyzed or solved by applying available theories, methods, and results of linguistics, or by developing new theoretical and methodological frameworks in linguistics to work on these problems. So you can also develop, new theoretical and methodological frameworks in linguistics when you work on these problems, you see. So applied linguistics differ from linguistics in general, mainly with respect to its explicit orientation towards practical everyday problems related to language and communication. So mainly, I think I told you, language and communication or language use. So it's explicit orientation. So linguistics, if we talk about linguistics, Mainly it's formal orientation, and especially the general linguistics if you're talking about the formal orientation, but it's explicitly talking about orientation towards practical issues, language use, the problems faced by the people, that's what. So the problems applied linguistics deals with range from aspects of the linguistic and communicative competence. So linguistics and communicative competence. If you talk about linguistics for that matter and formal linguistics for that matter, you know that Chomsky will give importance to competence, But here in the language uses, in the sociolinguistic research, for us, it's not only about competence. We go one step ahead. You must have heard about this person, Delheims, Delheims, this introduced the term communicative competence. So our purpose was also communicative competence also. It's not only the linguistic competence. And that's what you'll try to know slowly and gradually in this course, that even the whole teaching methods or methodologies, if you look into, it's something like earlier people are not interested in communicative competence. They were more interested in somewhere, following the grammar translation method, whether they can read or they can write, or that what's, or maybe simply pass an examination. And but slowly and gradually, so demand increases, and as a result, even the courses for different language, second language courses, whether you talk about ESP, English for specific purposes, English for a specific purpose also, depending on language use. Let's say you are working in MNC, in a call center, or you are working in a whichever the company, whether it's a Flipkart, Amazon, or let's say in McDonald's for that matter. Someone is a waiter or waitress. So for that person, he doesn't or she doesn't need that kind of hi-fi English or academic English. For that person, he needs some basic communicative English, and talking about the daily uses. So when the customer comes, so ma'am or sir, what do you like to have? Cheeseburger, burger with cheese or without cheese, or whatever the items available in McDonald's. So they'll try to speak English, whether it's the American version or the British version, and that's what, when they speak, if you have heard them initially, they do really speak well, those phrases and those sentences, few sentences. But at the time of, especially the live world discourse, if you're talking about live world discourse, I'm talking about that daily, the kind of the way we talk. And if you start talking to them the similar manner, it will be very difficult, because I'm not saying that not all of them, but mainly many people, is very difficult to communicate with them as well, and at times the kind of English they use, it's very funny at times, So I remember I was once in Pizza Hut with my wife, and the waiter, he came and just introduced himself, that sir, I'm this person and I'm here to satisfy you. And that is exactly the sentence he used, try to understand this, so maybe he was trying to be more kind of, cooperative, kind of honest, so that he can get more tips, something like that. Anyway, so what I'm saying is that language use, communicative competence, and as a result, so here whole the competence factor, what was proposed by formalist. So especially in applied linguistics, in the language uses, we need this communicative competence, not only competence. So you have to be one step ahead, and so some of these things, so all this that I'm talking about, International Association of Applied Linguistics, which was founded in 1964, and they started working on this, and second language acquisition, as I already told you, literacy, language planning, language disorder. These are the areas, language disorder, language and communicative communication related problems in between societies. Between societies, you do have communication problems, and language variation and linguistic discrimination. Linguistic discrimination, we know that how particular community, because of imposition of one language, and what kind of that kind of things, what is happening, and so linguistic discrimination, multilingualism, language conflict, language policy, language planning. So this is where wide range of research, wide range of disciplines, we'll see that they are engaged with. So I was talking about different countries, just briefly talking about Australia. What happened in Australia also, Australian applied linguistics took as its target the applied linguistics and of mother tongue teaching and teaching English to immigrants. So one is mother tongue teaching, and another thing is teaching English to immigrants. So whoever the immigrants, let's say, coming to going to Australia, so they're teaching those immigrants, and the same thing, if you're talking about USA, UK, Canada, Netherlands, many European countries, so they started teaching English, many countries. For that matter, South Africa also, mainly South Africa, So the Australia tradition shows a strong influence of continental Europe and of the USA rather than of Britain. So the Australian tradition, if you talk about, so the strong influence of Europe and mainly US, not that of Great Britain, and Applied Linguistics Association of Australia. So there is an international association, and within that country also, you have that Applied Linguistic Association of Australia was established at the National Congress of Applied Linguistics held in 1976. They have established it, and they have a joint conference in collaboration with Applied Linguistics Association of Applied Linguistics in New Zealand. I think I already told you that all these countries, they have kind of joint collaboration, joint conferences, joint kind of research they do, different kind of research also they conduct, So Australia will collaborate with New Zealand, or maybe with Canada and other countries, or Africa, South Africa. So talking about Canada also, if you talk about Canadian Association of Applied Linguistics, and is an officially bilingual, it's both. Canada, French is also spoken, and so scholarly association with approximately more than 200 members, maybe not number, members might have, increased now. So they have also journal. So whichever the country you are talking about, I mentioned there are more than 30 countries. So the association is there. They will come up with that journal, and not only journal, the conference, either annual conference or so they do have all that, or joint conference with another country. Okay, Ireland, same thing. Let's say the Irish Association of Applied Linguistics, and it's also founded somewhere in 1975. So this is the time, if you try to look at this 1960 to somewhere 1980, many associations in different countries were set up, were established, you see. So the Ireland, they produce a journal called Tinga, the Irish word for language, So the Irish word for language is Tinga. So for Japan also, you will see that in 1982, the Japan Association of Applied Linguistics was established, in the Japan Association of College English Teachers, in order to engage in activities on a more international scale. So it's not only local, but it's mainly global. That's our claim also, local to global. Our recent 56-inch person always claims this, local to global. So the same kind of, they are also in order to engage in activities on a more international scale. So in 1984, Japan Association of Applied Linguistics became affiliate of the International Association of Applied Linguistics. They also became part of this international association. They established in 1982, and then part of this international association, you see. And New Zealand, I talked about New Zealand also. So New Zealand, the Applied Linguistic Association of New Zealand, it produces the journal New Zealand Studies in Applied Linguistics, and has been collaborating with the Applied Linguistic Association of Australia. So they're collaborating with for some seminar conferences, and so you will see, and Africa is mainly South Africa, the southern African. Uh, okay, so Dipta, I'll come back to that part. The question you asked, Dipta. The Southern African Applied Linguistic Association was founded in 1980. There are currently 4 publications, including the Southern African Linguistics and Applied Linguistic Studies. So all this. So now, briefly, I'll talk about applied linguistics, or not mainly applied linguistics. Let's say linguistics in India, and I won't go to the, let's say, it's and linguistics in India. Talking about linguistics in India, you have a tradition. Go back to let's say Panini, 5th century BC, and there is a long tradition in Indian linguistic tradition. The kind of linguistics what we are talking about, Europe and USA. I would say that Indian tradition is much more rich or richer. Panini and all this Bhartrihari talk about. So anyway, and since so the things what is being discussed and talked by Bhartrihari, Panini, if you read Ashtadhyayi and all, so the whole grammar of Sanskrit by 4,000 rules, so he can. So, and even for the computer applications, people say that is one of the most scientific language, especially Sanskrit we are talking about. All languages are scientific, but especially for computer applications, Sanskrit works better in compared to other languages. That's what the Sanskrit scholars, they always say that. So, and to some extent, it's also true if you talk about the rules and the kind of structural, the formalism Sanskrit has. It is really interesting, it's very, very interesting, So, talking about only one verbal paradigm, so that who is the speaker, who is the recipient, and all other things, So, and other languages, European languages, it is not easy to tell. So, so very interesting, Sanskrit and the structure of Sanskrit. Anyway, so. Now talking about India, and if you are, I just simply talking about the recent, trend in India after, to some extent, after 1960s or 1970s, and I am taking this mainly looking at our center. Our center is Center for Linguistics, as you know, and Center for Linguistics. We have somehow started way back in 1970. or 74. That was the time Professor Anbita Abi, one of the founder members, she joined, and that was the time. Just simply talking about the brief history of our center, since you are a student of the center, and that time it was merged with English Center, and for 1 or 2 years, she joined as a UGC pool officer. That was the term, UGC pool officer for 1 or 2 years. She did her PhD from University of Cornell, and then came here and joined as a university pool officer. And then, let's say that post was permanent. She became assistant professor in the department, and so our history somewhere started back there in after 1975, and it was merged with English Center. So it was known Center for Linguistics and Center for Linguistics and English, CLE. Since you do not know, because I was a student of CLE, Center for Linguistics and English. Okay, so CLE. And for 1 or 2 years, CLE got bifurcated with English Center, and after that, what happened? Again, it merged with English Center. Okay, so for 1 or 2 years, for short period of time. So this, our union with English Center or English language, let's say, it continued for many years, and then in the year 2006, we also bifurcated. Again, bifurcated in the year 2006, and then the center becomes Center for Linguistics. As I told you earlier, it was Center for Linguistics and English. Now, if we're talking about, let's say, applied linguistics in our center, mainly in our center, applied linguistics, people, one of the prominent figures, now she has retired from the department, Professor Vaishna Narang. If you're talking about applied linguistics, I think she would be one of the founding members of applied linguistics. Professor Anbita Abi, definitely formal linguistics. At the same time, language documentation, language endangerment, field linguistics, descriptive linguistics, all these things. But talking about somewhere applied linguistics, the credit goes to mainly all the faculty members, but Professor Vaishna Narang would be one of the pioneering, especially in our center, Vaishna Narang, because these are some of the areas she worked in. Whether you talk about language teaching, whether you talk about sign language, whether you talk about neurolinguistics, and these are the very, very strong areas. Professor Narang, she has taught. She taught me as well. Let's say she was my teacher. So Professor Narang, and she retired somewhere around like 2014 or 2015. I don't exactly remember the date or year, but somewhere around 2014 or 15. So whole, let's say, more than 40 years, she was involved in the department and applied linguistics, and so this is simply, I was talking about our center, applied linguistics, and same way, let's say, in India, and this is the time, let's say, linguistics and language science department in many places in India, whether it's Hyderabad, let's say, whether it's Arunachal Pradesh, whether it's Delhi or Assam, Jammu Kashmir, Kerala, Madhya Pradesh, Manipur, Meghalaya, Nagaland, Sikkim. If you look at this, somewhere around many centers, many departments were established during this time. 1970, after 1970 or 1975. There are some centers. I must say there is a strong tradition that the British tradition, especially if you're talking about Kolkata, Calcutta University, it's a rich tradition. So philology, Professor Suniti Kumar, but Suniti Kumar Chatterjee was there. The philological tradition was there. Earlier also. So following this. Sir William Jones and all, Sir William Jones, the whole tradition of historical linguistics, if you remember. I don't know whether you have comparative linguistics and historical linguistics. So Sir William Jones was the founder member of the Asiatic Society, and he himself was one of the super polyglot. He knew many languages. He compared Latin, Sanskrit, and many other languages, and so somehow he was there in Bengal, and so I'm not talking about those rich centers. There are many, but mainly I'm taking this approach from after 1970s, let's say, and which are some of the centers in India, let's say. So now, and this is where this is your. Please note down if you're listening, and I'm going to give you a homework. It's not assignment. There is a distinction between homework and assignment. So please note down if you're listening, and if you're not listening, let's say at least pass this message to your friends or your colleagues, whoever, let's say. So what I want, whichever the country or whichever the state you come from, I'm not telling you that do a brief survey of whole India, but I want you, whichever the state you belong or hail from, or whichever the country for that matter, let's say you come from. So I know that there are 2 or 3 persons joining from, one is from Bangladesh, another person is from Yemen, yes. So there are 2 persons joining from international borders, let's say, international Syria and Bangladesh. So what I want, let's say, try to list all the institute or centers or the departments of your states or countries where linguistics or applied linguistics is taught. Try to list all this, And how is the program taught? In which level? Whether it's a college level, university level, or let's say, did you move to school level as well? And also try to see the efficacy of the program. Efficacy of the program, like how much efficacy of the program, I mean to say that whether it is how much or how far is it successful, how much institutional support or government support is there for this program, which about the centers or the departments, and the last, let's say, what are you going to do? Your own observations about linguistics and applied linguistics program, so to say, your own observation about linguistics and applied linguistics program. Okay, so this is what I want that all of you should do this homework, and you need to submit this homework in the Google Classroom. The next Monday, no, not Monday. Let's say I will give you at least 7 or 8 days. Next Tuesday by next Tuesday, let's say by 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock night. So, and some of these things I'm very particular. Dripta knows it very well. So I don't accept late submission. So please, if you are submitting, and please do submit on time or maybe before time. And one thing is that and submit in the Google Classroom, not somewhere else. Do not send me email or attach in the email. Submit in the Google Classroom, and I'll make that assignment. So there itself you need to submit. Today itself I'll make that assignment, the homework, you see. So this is where your homework would be, and so this is where I was talking about applied linguistics in India, and briefly, whichever the states you come from. As far as I know that I have kind of interaction with you in the last classes. I can see that people are coming from many places. Let's say many places, whether it's Bihar, Assam, Tripura, even from Manipur, and even Madhya Pradesh, and many places, let's say, of India. So this is your job. So just briefly, I can tell you, so far I know that when you are talking about the Central University, Arunachal Pradesh, if you're talking about Arunachal Pradesh, there is a Rajiv Gandhi University. You will find Center for Endangered Languages. Assam University, so there is a Department of Linguistics. And Tezpur University, there is a Center for Endangered Languages. Delhi, definitely Delhi, and Jawaharlal University. Delhi, you have University of Delhi as well as Jawaharlal Nehru University, and Jammu Kashmir, University of Kashmir, and Department of Linguistics. Kerala, Central University of Kerala, there is a Department of Linguistics. I think Halim is joining from Kerala. So, and your job is to find out, Halim, in Kerala, where it is taught and how far is it taught, what is the efficacy of the program, and other things. So, Madhya Pradesh. Madhya Pradesh, Indira Gandhi National Tribal University. So, recently, not recently, I think 5 or 6 years, maybe more than 5 or 6 years. So this Indira Gandhi National Tribal University is there. I know some of my colleagues, they are teaching there. Manipur University, the linguistic department. Meghalaya, one of the finest again disciplines earlier. Northeastern Hill University linguistic department. Still, it's very good. Nagaland University, you'll find Nagaland University. Sikkim as well, and the Sikkim University. And I think Telangana, Telangana, and mainly the University of Hyderabad. And in University of Hyderabad, that's what Center for Applied Linguistics and Translation Studies, Center for Endangered Languages and Mother Tongue Studies. And University of Hyderabad is pretty good, if you're talking about applied linguistics. And even IFLU. Even if you talk about IFLU, English and Foreign Language University, Hyderabad, pretty good. School of Language Sciences, Phonetics, and there itself you have different departments, and phonetics and spoken language, spoken English, linguistics and contemporary English, and computational linguistics, School of Distant Education, that's another distant education, English language teaching, linguistics and phonetics. So there are different departments in English and Foreign Language University, Hyderabad, So I know many colleagues there, they're working there, teaching there. So, and So this IFLU has another campus back in Shillong also. I think you know that IFLU has another campus, and I think another campus they have set up in UP as well. So English and Foreign Language University, Shillong, as well as so the main campus is in Hyderabad. So another is in Shillong and another is in UP. I think recently they must have set up another campus somewhere in UP. So you can get this. Yeah, Lucknow, Rupali. Yes, you're right, Lucknow. So English and Foreign Language University, Lucknow. Yeah. So you will find that MA in Linguistics is also taught, PhD in Linguistics and as well as Phonetics. Tripura University, I think we are joined by Senjukti, and you are from Tripura. So you have also Linguistic Department of Linguistics and Tribal Languages back in Tripura University. And Uttar Pradesh, BHU. I think in BHU also you'll see that BA programs are also taught. Aligarh Muslim University, again famous. This is also one of the very good institute if we're talking about linguistics for that matter. BHU, again, all of my many colleagues, let's say whether it's Rajnath Bhatt and many other people. So even Lucknow also, there is a Lucknow University also, linguistic department is also there. West Bengal, talking about West Bengal, Vishwabharat University and Jadavpur University for that matter. One of my our students, Atanu Saha, is teaching there, and many people say. And so I this time talked about some central universities, and then within, let's say, in different states, you'll find that different state universities also have a Department of Linguistics or Center for Linguistics for that matter. And one of the famous is Deccan College, Pune. This is now deemed university, Deccan College, Pune. The rich tradition there, especially Deccan College, Pune. So some of my colleagues, Sonal Kulkarni, not only Sonal Kulkarni, Shailendra Mohan sir is also there, Shailendra Da and other people. So Deccan College, Pune, Department of Linguistics. This Sonal Kulkarni, one of the famous sociolinguist, she is there, and as well as Shailendra Mohan. Shailendra Mohan, he did his PhD from our center, and University of Mumbai, Gujarat, I think Maharaja Shahuji University or something, I forgot, Department of Linguistics, and I think Professor, yeah, who could.
Sayaji University in Baroda.
Yeah, Baroda. Yes, that's what, Baroda. Professor Pandey, one of my colleagues, he recently retired from the department. He was there in Baroda, and then from Baroda he came to JNU in 2001. So he was there earlier in Baroda. It's a pretty good institute, and Baroda, if you're talking about Assam, Gauhati University, West Bengal, University of Calcutta. I talked about the rich traditions of philological tradition, school of so to say comparative Indian languages, comparative literature for that matter also in the University of Calcutta. Jadavpur University, I talked about Jadavpur University, School of Languages and Linguistics, and as well as Bhashacharya Suniti Kumar Chatterjee Center for, I think, Language is also there, and Uttar Pradesh, Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar University, Linguistics, Foreign Language, Department of Linguistics also. So this just simply trying to give you a kind of brief overview where linguistics is taught. Even let's say for that matter, if you have done your MA in linguistics and try to see, to kind of pursue your future, where you can go and where linguistics is taught. So just trying to give you kind of brief outline, so that you do not know like what to go, what to do. I'm telling you there is a huge scope, and this is just simply talking about central universities and state universities. Now I'll come back to IITs and NITs and triple ITs. So Gujarat, I was talking about Gujarat also. There are different places there. You'll find Bihar also, Mahatma Gandhi Central University, Nalanda University, and Nalanda University established also School of Languages and Literature. Some of our students are teaching there in Nalanda University. I know some of them personally. Central University of Bihar also you'll find. Uttarakhand, and as well as Uttaranchal also. Uttarakhand. Jharkhand also for that matter, CUJ, Central University of Jharkhand also. I missed that part, Central University of Jharkhand, I think, so at least I think 4 or 5 JNU alumni are there, in the department, I remember, I know those. I have visited those places, and So so just to mention, so this there, all these places I mentioned, central universities and state universities, all this, you will find that mainly linguistics is taught as a regular course, and but there are many centers, many departments. You'll see that there are certificate and diploma courses are also taught in different places, and I have mentioned those, some of this. Even Jadavpur University also, you'll find that there are some certificate or diploma courses they offer, and for our centers, the tradition, I'll simply tell you that we do not have any certificate or diploma courses in linguistics, but at least what we do, many people are, maybe since you are joining, in MA linguistics, what we do, we offer some optional courses to those BA students who are pursuing different, foreign languages, and especially the JNU, kind of language studies tradition is that all the students, especially the students who are pursuing BA, whichever the language, whether it is BA in French or Japanese or Korean, all these students, they will have to do some optional courses from outside the centers. Let's say someone is doing BA in Korean, he has to do 8 optional courses, at least 8 optional courses from outside the centers. Right? So what happens? Many students, for all these students pursuing their BA in foreign languages, they will come to our center and they do optional courses. And I can tell you that my experience of being the course in charge for many years, at least 10 to 12 years, I was still at times I being the course in charge of BA optional courses. So the kind of courses we offer, to those BA students pursuing different foreign languages, so like introduction to linguistics, and the intake capacity is somewhere around 35 to 40, and I cannot tell you. So, and every year we have to increase the number of intake capacity more than, how many students join. So more than, let's say, 50, 60, at times 100 students, and we do not know what to do. So you have to make section A or section B at times, because there's a huge demand for this introduction to linguistics. And I remember many people whom we taught to BA programs, and they liked it so much that many people, they joined in the MA program, and some of them they pursued their research in PhD, and finally they become either lecturer or somewhere else, maybe a political figure also. I know some of the people later on become very good political figure as well, like anyway. So that's a different thing. So introduction to linguistics, we offer courses like introduction to linguistics, language and literature, phonetics, introduction to morphology, introduction to contrastive linguistics, language in society, language learning. These are some of the courses. Historical and comparative linguistics, semantic theories and analysis, introduction to stylistics, readings in linguistics, introduction to social linguistics, computational linguistics, introduction to Indian linguistic tradition, and so some of this, just as simply mentioning some of these things. So there's a huge demand for, especially linguistics courses in JNU, so many students, they come and do courses with us, and so in addition to this certificate and diploma courses, I just simply tell you that as I was telling you, that IITs and NITs and triple ITs, and so I remember there are many people, some of our colleagues are working in different IITs, whether you are talking about IIT Guwahati or IIT Delhi, IIT Kanpur. I think you know that there are many, I think in IITs itself, there is a humanities discipline is introduced, and within this humanities, so either English language, not only English language, linguistics, sociology, even political science, whether you, so all these things you see, and so there is a huge scope. Recently, I remember, so one of my colleague, she is teaching in IIT Patna. Another two of them recently joined in IIT Kharagpur, and also IIT Kanpur. Also, some of our students, they have also joined, so from different places, So IITs and also NITs for that matter. NITs, NITs, whether there are many NITs, so whether it's NIT Jalandhar or other places also, and so you will try to get the list. So linguistics or applied linguistics related things you will find, and triple ITs also. Triple ITs also you'll find, whether it's triple IT Vadodara, some of our colleagues and some people who have done PhD from Center for Linguistics. They are teaching in different NITs as well. I'm just not naming them, but and one thing is Kendriya Hindi Sansthan. I don't know whether you are aware of this Central Hindi Training Institute, Kendriya Hindi Sansthan. Though it is specifically for Hindi, designed for Hindi, but they also do this Hindi language teaching. And so there are many places, and not only that, Amity University, talking about the private university, some of our students are teaching in different also this private university, Amity University, Galgotia University, Lovely Professional, and so many places, So these are some of the things, So that's briefly I was telling you that. So talking about the career opportunities, what are the career opportunities? You are smart enough since you have thought of pursuing this subject, this field, So you can go in academia. Academia, like you can be a professor, lecturer, or a teacher. You can be in academia, whether it is in the schools, college, or in the university, or maybe you can be ELT expert, English language teaching experts, because I know that there are many of our students who have gone to different countries, Middle East, different countries in Middle East. They are teaching English, and many of our students, they have also gone to different places, and they are teaching, especially talking about the second language teaching, either Hindi or English for that matter, you see, in different South Asian countries, or Middle East countries, So you have huge scope if you're talking about computer industry. Just today, I just received and email from one of our students. I think Dripta's friend, she has joined somewhere in a computer industry, and she just telling me, sir, I have joined this, in this program, and so I need your recommendation, your reference or something, So I said, yes, good to know that you have, once you have completed your MA in linguistics, you have already joined in the program. It's a pretty good. They are offering pretty good lump sum, So I'm not naming the person, but I think Dipta knows who is the person. So what I'm saying, computer industry, government and private sector, the government sector, Central Institute of Indian Languages, talking about India, let's say. So many, lots of our research scholars, they are working in CIL. The assistant director, and there are many people, assistant director, he himself is from our center, Dr. Narayan Chaudhary and Sujay Sharkar. I can name many, So there are many people from our center who have done linguistics, and big dignitaries for that matter, So in the government sector, in the private sector, and also MNCs. MNCs, I know many people who are language experts or have done their PhD in linguistics and joining in different these big giants, MNCs, whether it's Apple, Amazon, Flipkart, Google for that matter, So and many people, they have joined, working as a language expert, and different areas, language revitalization, literacy program, script development, and so there's a huge opportunity for linguistics, So briefly, I told you about scope and opportunities in linguistics and where it is taught, not in detail. So, and this is your job. Somebody asked me that, please, sir, once again, tell us about the homework, So homework, so what I told you, that I have already told you that where linguistics is taught. What I am saying is that where you are from, let's say which state you belong to, whether it's Madhya Pradesh or Assam or Kerala or whichever the country, whether it's Syria or whether it is Yemen or Bangladesh. So what is you need to do? You just need to list down all the places where linguistics or applied linguistics to some extent is taught. That is what number one, this is what you are going to do. And then you add, after that, whichever the information available in the website, and if it is not in the website, if you could contact some people, let's say, well and good, through telephonic conversation also, it's also fine. So try to know the efficacy of the program. Let's say, how is the program taught, and which level, in the college level, on the university level. I know that many places it is taught in the college level, but not necessarily in the school level. Linguistics is not yet taught in the school level, as a subject, So anyway, so which level it is taught, whether it's the university level, college level. So this is what you need to know, and efficacy of the program, how is the program running, whether it is like, people don't want to come into linguistics, just for the sake of, by hook and crook, the people have come, and they don't have any interest, or really people have serious interest in linguistics. So whichever the things, so the efficacy of the program, and how much institutional support is there for the program, how much institutional support. If in general, talking about in general, for linguistics, the institutional support is not there, but I can tell you, for especially for second language teaching, maybe there will be huge institutional support. For that matter, talking about India, let's say, if you're talking about second language teaching, and especially Hindi language teaching, you will find that there are different places, promotion for Hindi, and even for promotion for Sanskrit. Though Sanskrit in many places, let's say in different universities, you'll find that well-established Sanskrit language departments, and also huge fund for it. Huge fund, I'm saying it. Huge fund for it, and huge fund for Hindi language as well. But comparatively, maybe other language department, linguistic department, you may not receive that kind of funding or something, either from UGC or from ICSSR or other funding agencies. This is what I have been saying. So you need to look at the efficacy of the program, how much institutional support is there for the program, and your own observation. That's what you're about linguistics and or applied linguistics about the program. So this is where, in general, I told you about history of linguistics in India, and not only in India, and how it began, and how it expanded in the different places. So this is where. So we'll continue our discussion, and if you have, let's say, something to add, any query, or please, you are feel free to add. Please, Dripta, you are asking something. Dripta, if you're listening, so please go ahead and ask.
Yes, my question was, one is related to how the applied linguistics associations established in countries now, which are called settler colonies, or later populated by the mostly European white people, and endangered the indigenous back that time. How are they trying now to preserve those indigenous languages, as well as are they trying to officially recognize them as their official languages? Like, I know, for one example, in New Zealand there is a huge emphasis on Maori languages and their cultures, and the whites there also have respect, and also like genuine respect and perseverance for this Maori culture, and they are accepting is their own culture, and it's not something like cultural appropriation, but genuine respect. But is it happening in other parts of the world? This is even in India, for that matter. Like, India has kind of can be called a settler colony, although the history goes back to like thousands of years, but still. And other than that, another thing I was asking, since that is going to probably, I do not know, my future interest is in do some works on folk studies, or old ancient texts and those. So what is the scope in India to do some research works on that, like some discourse analysis or some narrative analysis of those kinds of texts? For example, you can take in Bangla Manusha Mongol, or that those kinds of things. So, what is the like? What are the scopes in India? Some research works on that.
Okay. Okay. So two things Jipta has asked about that, talking about yeah. So especially Australia, New Zealand, and other places to look at. And so Jipta, what happened? You see. So there are different disciplines within applied linguistics. As I told you that uh, one of the things I think some of our students know it, that even you have also read in the last time, if you remember, that evolutionary linguistics. You must have heard about this evolutionary linguistics. You must have heard about eco-linguistics. Evolutionary linguistics,
Yes,
eco-linguistics.
sir.
Yes. So what are these evolutionary linguistics? What are these eco-linguistics? So I'll just simply talk about this eco-linguistics. The concern of eco-linguistics is what is happening. So it's we talk about language, in general, in the theoretical tradition, language as the form, then especially the kind of applied linguistic research, so we try to, and social linguistic research, we try to look at language and use. So what happened is language use because of whatever different reasons, because of monopoly, because of different global parameters, factors. Many languages are being endangered, or on the verge of extinction. So this whole field of ecolinguistics, so not mainly our research is not confined to just historical, social, or cultural context, but rather Halliday talks about that we need to look at applied linguistics and try to look at linguistics or language with the ecosystem, among other things. You remember we talked about discourse and small discourse and big discourse last time. So same way, so because there's a wide distraction in the ecosystems, so there are many, so related to climate things are also coming into picture. So all these things, so as a result, since you have asked about applied linguistics, whether the applied linguists are concerned with language endangerment or not, because the whole concern is coming from there somewhere around 1990s. Halliday is one of the person, and as a result, after 1990s, and this is the time, Dripta, what happened. People like Barnard Comrie, the whole field linguistic traditions. If you remember, if you know about field linguistic traditions, one of the language typologists, Barnard Comrie, and many other people, so who started working on that directions. And not only Professor Barnard Comrie, Professor Anbita Abi. Even if you talk about Professor Anbita Abi, she has received this Padma Shri. Why Padma Shri so far? Why she has received Padma Shri? Because the language we are talking about, Andamani's language, Onge Jarwa, only few people, when she started working on Onge Jarwa, only there are 6 speakers left. And the next time she visited only 2. And the next time she visited, only 1 speaker was there, Boa Junior. And I think Boa Junior, she died as well, I think somewhere around 2015 and 16, 2015 or 16 she died. So what is happening when there is nobody is there, let's say? So as a result, language loss, there is a whole lots of things, culture and many other things are getting kind of that kind of extinction things what you're talking about. So one of the things, especially in the Europe and in the USA also, for this kind of language endangerment, that kind of revitalization, there is a huge fund. UNESCO, even if you look at UNESCO, there's a huge fund available for this language endangerment. One of the institute, SOAS, you must have heard about SOAS. Peter Austin is there. Peter Austin, and the whole Himalayan language project, Dripta, if you have heard about this person,
Yeah.
Van Dream, Professor George Van Dream. So he worked of the languages of the most of the Himalayan languages somewhere, and on this some same tune, so language endangerment, language revitalization, so it's really interesting. Talking about you mentioned about Australia. So what happened? One thing I find it, at times is very sad. The colonial things you mentioned about. So these are the people, to some extent you can see that the British colony was set up in most of the parts of the world, and these are the people who, to some extent, are to be blamed for destruction of many indigenous communities, because they wanted to bring them into the mainstream civilization. And when they started bringing them in the mainstream civilization, what happened? Their old culture, old language also got extinct. And one of the things, since you have mentioned about Australia, just I'll simply tell you. And this is there is a case of Australian lost generation. You can type this in lost generation, and how inhuman this British colony or Britishers, Americans, they have done it. So in Australia, there are many Aborigines. They speak different Aboriginal languages, and whenever the child was born, and what they did, they separated the child from their parents. And after 15 or 20 years, they they kind of united, or there is a reunion took place between the parents and the children. So this whole generation, let's say there's a huge, at least 50 or 60 years. So these generations of children not able to speak or know about their indigenous culture. They know English for that matter. So in my understanding, some of these people now they are trying to talk about revitalization of language, trying to bring many people mainstream civilization. And so in a way, they are the one who are responsible. Now it's very difficult, because whom to blame for or whom not to, because at times what happens, own community people, they themselves are responsible. You cannot blame that, Britishers are responsible, or X or Y is responsible. At times our own people, our own community people, they are themselves are responsible. So there are many other reasons, linguistic factors, extra linguistic factors are there. Coming back to a second question, Ripta, as you have talked about that folklore, and especially some kind of documentation of let's say Manosha Mongol and some other things you have mentioned. It's a pretty good area, and especially the folklore. There's a very good disciplines, though folklore discipline is not taught well in different parts of India, in different universities. But I know there are some departments, there are some universities, folklore is taught, So one of the very strong department, it's in Nehu. So I know a person, Professor Desmond. He's one of the experts, especially the kind of things you are talking about, and so there is a huge scope, since you have already done your MA in linguistics. So you can, let's say, approach to those professors and to those disciplines, to those departments. Maybe you can submit your research proposals back there. And also, ICC, SSR or UGC, that kind of minor project or major project, if you can get some kind of scholarship, and then you can also, kind of, pursue your research. So it's a pretty good thing. Even talking about Sanskrit Center, our professor, what is his name? This computational linguistic, Grishnath Jha. If you're talking about Professor Grishnath Jha, he has documented all this Sanskrit text. The thing what you are talking about, Manosha Mongol and others, and you just search Professor Grishnath Jha on his website, you will find that Natya Shastra and other text, he just documented all those Natya Shastra text, with all those kind of morphological analyzers. So it's not only about documenting, but also trying to relate to what you can gain from those texts, So something like that. So you have a huge in this field.
Yeah, but the thing with I think with indigenous folk literature, there are less funds than Sanskrit studies and all that. Like even though it's Bangla will probably have more funds, or Hindi will probably have more funds. Marathi and Tamil, this will have probably more funds. But when I will go into much more indigenous, like for example, if I go about working on Rava culture or something like that, Rava culture of North Bengal, so on, there will not be that much of scope. Like it's very disappointing.
This is a global phenomenon. This is a global phenomenon. For this, what you need to apply, that's what I told you. UNESCO, you have to approach to the institute, SWAS and other foreign institute, and they have lots of fun for this. If you can be part of this that team. SWAS, I mentioned about SWAS, even Himalayan language project, Band Dream and all. So then you can get very good fund. Otherwise, I don't know about especially Indian either UGC, ICCSR and other places. So but ICCSR gives funding for those, even minority languages, indigenous languages as well. Okay, so we have let's say some discussion, and anyone would like to comment, would like to add something, please go ahead. Since it's not a one-way traffic, it's always two-way traffic. So please go ahead if you're listening at all. I know you are listening, but don't want to say anything.
So I had a question. So
Yes,
like yeah, so like there is a certificate exam for English to be able to teach English as a language instructor. What is the equivalent for Hindi? I tried looking it up, but like I wasn't very successful. So do you have any idea on that?
Okay, for Hindi, so to say, you see, for talking about TOEFL and even GRE examinations and all, if you are going to USA and other European countries, you have to have that certificate, TOEFL and all. So you are exactly right. For Hindi, generally, see what is happening. Since we ourselves are native language speakers, you see, and many people, especially in India, you are from to some extent from UP or Delhi and all, it is understood that you know or speak Hindi pretty well. So what happens for this mainly there are many places. Let's say you are going to USA to teach to teach uh, to teach what do you say, Hindi. I am talking about the Fulbright programs. Huh? So what happens that to some extent the recommendation letter of the professors. So this agency, so whoever the referees are there, so they give that whatever the language proficiency of that particular applicants. So let's say I get at least many kind of request that, sir, please be my referee, and then I have to write to them whether the person is able to speak or communicate in Hindi or whichever the language, something like that. So for that, I am not aware about whether who is going to give certificate in Hindi. There is any institute going to give certificate in Hindi? Yes, one of the institute, as I mentioned, that Kendriya Hindi Sansthan. Kendriya Hindi Sansthan in Agra. So in Kendriya Hindi Sansthan, what happens is not only about Indians. Kendriya Hindi Sansthan, there are many people from other part of the world. They also come and they also learn Hindi. And this Central Institute of Hindi, they have, I think, 6 or 7 branches in whole India. One I was there in Assam, another was in, I think, in Gujarat, and anyway 7 or 8 branches are there. The main branch is somewhere, this is the central Agra, and another is in Delhi also. So I'm talking about these foreign language teachers who are coming from, let's say, Syria, from USA, from whichever the countries. So they are being trained Hindi, and after a period of 1 or 2 years, whichever the program, so they get a certificate. They get a certificate that yes, you are a professional teacher now. You can teach Hindi. But the other questions, let's say, related to that, whether you are not part of this program, so to say, the Kendriya Hindi Sanstha program. So who would give you the certificate? I think there is less institute, less department available for this, providing you Hindi certificate. That whether, so for that, I think mainly different people, they they will depend on the recommendation of the teachers or the professors or their teachers for that matter. Smriti, is it clear to you, Smriti?
Sir, I guess the question is slightly different. I understand your answer on that, but like the question I was trying to ask, in English there are multiple certificates program, like there is CELTA, and there are other certificate programs. So like that certificate says that you can teach English to the languages, like to other language speakers. So I know Hindi is my mother tongue, but like as to teach linguistics, I must have a master's degree or like and pass certain exam. I must clear NTA. So like there must be other exams that I have to clear something. So even for like if you're an English language instructor, you have to pass like an exam. So
Mhm.
what is the equivalent of that? I'm not talking about proficiency, like I'm not talking about TOEFL kind of exams.
So are you talking about to get a job? That's what still is not clear to me. Are you talking about to get a job and to be a
Yeah,
language?
yeah. Like if I want to teach Hindi at Kendri Hindi Sansthan, what should my qualifications be?
Okay, okay. See, Smriti, then it's clear now. So what is happening is that, see, mainly what happens that in India, especially if you want to teach in colleges and universities, earlier this was that MA in that particular subject. Let's say if you are in MA in English, so you have to have NET also, either NET or maybe MPhil or PhD. Yeah? So that is one of the things criteria. And now, to some extent, MPhil is not there. So what is the criteria for Kendriya Hindi Sanstha? That's one of our students last year he was appointed. Let's say what he did his MA in linguistics, and after that uh, MA in linguistics mainly, and then he got the job there, and he did his completed his PhD. So this all this institute to advertise those positions. Okay, so they advertise those positions. On the basis of that, people they apply, let's say, and they will specify what kind of teachers they need. So they will specify native speakers of Hindi, something like that, and or MA in linguistics, MA in Hindi, they will specify all that. And in addition to that, whichever the government criteria that you have to have a NET, that particular subject. So everything is well specified in the advertisement. Okay. So in the state university, if you're talking about state universities, in different state universities, you are applying, let's say Tamil Nadu, you want to be a teacher there. So you have to know Tamil. Same thing like Bangla, let's say, Bengal, there is a requirement that even people that know Hindi or English for that matter, but you need to know Bangla. Same thing, let's say UP or other places. So these are some of the things you will get to know from the advertisement itself, whether the person well qualified or not well qualified. Then on the basis of that, you can apply for these positions. And then there is a process, interview process, and after interview is done, so you can join in that particular department, whether it's Kendriya Hindi Sanstha and any other places. Okay, so so to say, we can continue our discussion, and let's say if you have any other doubts and doubts and other things, you can write to me and send your queries in the Google Classroom. So just to tell you briefly, tomorrow we'll